Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Habayim. We are starting a new Masechta, Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and we have to really all the people who have worked hard to make such a beautiful, magnificent start. Really, Hazaku Baruch. Today's Amud is being learned as a zchut refuah shelema for Daniela Bad Rachel and Manzal Bat Saltanat Goltaj, dedicated by Dan family. Also sponsored anonymously for Refuah Shelema Daniel Moshe Ben Farangis Avraham, and for Refuah Shelema of Sarah Batmina by Miss Zita Taban, and Le'ilui Nishmat Betzalel Ben Rafael Vester by Mahbubi family, Le'ilui Nishmat Mordechai Ben Jalil and Muhtaram Bat Mordechai by Khordar family, and Le'ilui Nishmat Shoshana Bat Yehuda by Sadiq family. This Amud is also being learned, as is Refuah Shelema for Rachel Simcha Bad Nahid. And the today's learning is dedicated anonymously for Refuah Shelema of Yosef Ben Farideh that should have Refuah Shelema. This week's learning of the community, all learnings of the community have been dedicated graciously by Shea family and Mahbubi families. It should be an ultimate support for all their mishpachot. Amen. Okay, so Masechet Rosh Hashanah doesn't really need a whole lot of hakdama, doesn't need a lot of a preface. It is Kishmo Kahu. It talks about what is considered Rosh Hashanah. Now, when we say Rosh Hashanah, generally speaking, we right away think of Echad B'Tishrei, the Yom Adin, after Elul, preparing for a whole month, and that comes Rosh Hashanah. But in truth, there are 4 different elements that are considered Rashi Shanim, they're considered the beginnings of year, each one of them for a very specific halachic ramification that they have, as we will see in the Mishnah and the Gemara. And yet the Masechta is not called Rashi Hashanim, it's called Rosh Hashanah, because really the main focus, after everything's said and done, the main focus of the Masechta is going to be on Echad B'Tishrei, on the actual Rosh Hashanah that we know as Yom Hadin. But the Mishnah starts Arba'a Rashi Shanimim. There are 4 different dates that are considered Rosh Hashanah. And again, as we mentioned, each one of them must have a very specific halachic ramification, because otherwise, who cares? Why do I need to know today is Rosh Hashanah? So you have to understand, it has to have a halachic Hidush that they are teaching us. So says the Mishnah, Be'echad b'Nisan, Rosh Hashanah limlachim. The first day of Nisan is Rosh Hashanah. Now, as a preface, we know that we count the Chodashim from Nisan. That is not disputable. The Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, the actual first day of the 7th month. Tishrei is the 7th month. Chodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. That if someone does not have a Gemara, there are copies here available. Chodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim means today, the first day of Nisan is Rosh Chodashim, is the beginning of all of the months in Hebrew year. So therefore we count from Nisan. The Nisan is not only the beginning of the year for the count of the months, but it's also Rosh Hashanah Limlachim. It's considered the Rosh Hashanah for kings. So what does that mean? It's when they shtarot. When you wrote, means to the king to write this and this day from this and this month of the 3rd, 4th year of Hashem should carved over him, and then he had 4 lines of titles for him to feel great. That's what they did. Now we'll get to it in just a moment, what exactly the reason for that was, but that is the date that is considered the beginning of the year for Melachim. Which means, if you were a king on Adar, if he was nominated and and his malchut started on 25th of Adar. 5 days later, he already is in the second year of his malchut, because that 5 days at the end of Chodesh, that would be by Tishrei. If he was before 5 days before Nisan, if he is at the end of Chodesh Adar, like 5 days before, after Adar, it will become Nisan, and you will have.
באחד בניסן ראש השנה למלכים ולרגלים. That's Nisan. באחד באלול, now you think Elul is the beginning of the preparation for Chag HaPesach, but really, Echad be'elul, the first day of Elul, is also Rosh Hashanah for itself, le'Ma'aser Be'ema, for Ma'aser Be'ema. Now, what is exactly Ma'aser Be'ema? Every year, when you have new babies born in your flock, you have to give a Ma'aser from that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, how does that work exactly? That you have an enclosure of all the new babies born in your flock, and you have a narrow pathway out. You go out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and on the 10th one you make a red mark, and then those are going to be korbanot that you're going to bring in Yerushalayim. Parts of it are going to be given to Mizbeach, parts to Kanim, and the Baalim, the owners, eat it in Yerushalayim. B'kedusha. That's Ma'asar Be'ema. You cannot separate Ma'asar Be'ema from the animals born in 1 year, the animals of a different year. All of that enclosure that you have has to be the same year's babies. So therefore, now it's all of a sudden very important, when was this baby born? If one of them was born before Echad Be'elul, and the other one was born after Echad Be'elul, you cannot be in the same enclosure counted. One of them is going to be for this year, the other one is going to be for the next year. And you have to mark it for next year, it's going to go in the enclosure. Echad Be'elul is Ma'asar Be'ema. By the way, how do we know that you do Ma'asar Be'ema? If you take a quick look at Rashi, שאין מעשרין מן הנולדים בשנה זו על הנולדים נולדים בחברתה, דכתיב, the pasuk for it is in Dvarim Yudalet, Aser ta'aser et kol tevuat zar'acha. The language is double language. Aser ta'aser. You shall give tithe, and he says it twice. And the Gemara learns that the reason that it said Aser ta'aser, one is the tevuat zar'acha, one is the actual topic of the pasuk that is talking about your produce, and the other one is talking about shtem masrot hakatuv. The second one that we learn is Ma'asar Be'ema. And that has to be from 1 year on its own. So therefore it's important to know what the Rosh Hashanah is. And Rosh Hashanah is Be'echad Be'elul. Says the Gemara, that is Machloket Tanaim. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon omrim Be'echad Be'tishrei. They say, no, it's not Echad Be'elul, but this is also on Rosh Hashanah itself. First day of Tishrei, that's the Rosh Hashanah for Ma'asar Be'ema, aside from being also Rosh Hashanah for people. Says the Gemara, Be'echad Be'tishrei, the first day of Tishrei, obviously, is Rosh Hashanah Leshanim, is the beginning of the year for count of years. Now, you have to understand, what exactly is the difference? Now, we know Yom Adin, Teshuvah, all that, you blow the shofar, but who cares? What the halachic difference is. I know that on the first day of Tishrei, I have to come to shul, dress well, right? Yichlu mashmanim, we blow shofar. But why is it different that we count the years from Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah? That the Gemara is going to ask and answer. So far, we have no clue why it makes a difference that Echad B'Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah, is considered Rosh Hashanah for the count of years. Right now we are holding a 5,785. That is counted from Rosh Hashanah, even though that the months we count from Nisan, as we mentioned, so Tishrei is the 7th month, but the count of years is going to be from Tishrei. What the difference is in halacha, why do I need to know this? We'll see in the Gemara. Says the Mishnah. Also, Echad B'Tishrei, aside from being Rosh Hashanah Leshanim, is also Rosh Hashanah for Shmitin ve'Yovelot. Which means like this. On Shemitah year, the sabbatical 7th year, you cannot work the land. What day does that start from? That you cannot plow, you cannot water, you cannot, all that from the day of Rosh Hashanah. So Rosh Hashanah is the last preparations that they do for the next year, and then for the whole year, it's going to be a sabbatical year. It starts not from a season to plant, it doesn't count from Nisan, right, from spring, it counts from the day of Rosh Hashanah until the next year's Rosh Hashanah. So it says the Gemara, also for Yovel, which year is considered Yovel, also starts from Echad B'Tishrei. We mentioned this before when we discussed one of the rabbis of Masachet Sukkah, of even though that the shofar is blown on Yom Kippur of the Jubilee year of the Yovel, but the real year of Yovel starts from Rosh Hashanah. Also, Leneti'ah Velirakot. Also for the plantations and for Yerakot. What does that make a difference? Because when you have a plant, a tree that you plant, so you have halachot that comes with the plantations. And all of that starts from Rosh Hashanah. If you have, for instance, halachot of orla, you plant a tree, and you want to know how many years has passed that this tree has been around. So do I do 365 days or 54 days of lunar or solar calendar, or do I do just a regular from the beginning of the year until then? So it says the Mishnah, Be'echad B'Shvat, Rosh Hashanah le'ilan. The beginning of Shvat is Rosh Hashanah le'ilan because of the same thing. Because you have to give maser for your fruits, and the masrot go after the year's, that year's maser. You cannot take the figs from this year, the fruit from this year, and the fruits from last year, and mix and match and give maser from this year on the last year, and vice versa. You have to have it from the same year, and therefore it matters to know what exactly is the beginning of the year, and that is, says the Mishnah, Echad B'Shvat. And that's Beit Shammai. The Hillel hold, V'chamisha Asar bo. It's not going to be the first day of Shvat, but it's going to be the Tetvav B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, otherwise known also as Tu B'Shvat. So it says, the Gemara, Beit Hillel omrim, B'chamisha Asar bo. And now the Gemara is going to ask questions of which one of this next number of dapim in the Gemara are going to go line by line explaining every single detail of this Mishnah. But first I want to just bring a little interesting anecdote from the Tosafot. You take a look at the top Tosafot, and it says Arba'a Rashi Shanim Hen. There are 4 heads, 4 Rosh Hashanahs, and it says Arba'a Rashi Shanim Hen. Now the Tosafot asks, if you take a look at the beginning of Masechet Bava Kama, also starts with the same exact language of Arba Avot Nezikin. Right? There are 4 types of damages. But it doesn't say Arba Avot Nezikin Hen. And this is one of them is saying Hen, they are. And in the other one, you don't say they. The same is in the beginning of Masechet Kiddushin and versus Masechet Ketuvot. Right? Ha'isha niknet. It says Ha'isha niknet. The woman is acquired in different ways, and by Masechet Ketuvot, it doesn't say Ha-Betula Niset, but it says Betula Niset. And you take a look at the Tosafot there, ask the same exact question. Why do you have a Hey by one of them? Why do you not have a Hey by one of them? Isha, Ha-Isha, Betula, Ha-Betula, Arba'a, Rashi Shanim, Hen, Arba'a Avot Nezikin, Hen, not Hen. Small details, right? And these are the first Tosafot in Masechet Bava Kama, in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, in Masechet Ketuvot, in Masechet Kiddushin. So Rav Dan Segel, Shlita, the Konovich Mashgiach, he once was visiting one of the other yeshivot. He asked this question. He said, imagine to yourself, you're going back in time, you're going to the time of Baalei Tosafot. the Rabbeinu Tam, Rabbi Yitzchak HaZaken. These are the legendary names in Gemara, in the Rishonim, and the Tosafot. And you go into the yeshiva to learn Torah, and you're expecting that the complicated insights back and forth of the Gemara, and all they tell you is, they start the shiur, what does it say hen? What is not hen? What do you have the hay over here, not the hay? So seriously? It would be such a letdown. You go to the yeshivot, it's the center of Dan Segal, he's one of the big Baalei Musar of this generation. He said, look, that's always how Baalei Tosafot started their shiur. Why? Because they wanted us to know every little word in Gemara, every letter and word is accounted for. Every detail really is important. It's not just that, oh, let's learn Gemara and talk about the deep details. Every little thing that is said really matters, and hence they always would try to start a Masechta, try to start a Shiur with something insignificant in the first glance, to tell you that every single thing in Torah and Gemara is accounted for. There's no extra words or extra letters in it. So, with that being said, says the Gemara, when you tell me Be'echad Benisan is Rosh Hashanah Limlachim, is for the kings, who cares? What's exactly the difference that the beginning of Nisan is Rosh Hashanah Limlachim? And says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chisda is the Shtarot. This is for writing Jewish documents. Ditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Shtarei Chov HaMukdamin. This is the Mishnah in Masechet Gitin, that the Shtarei Chov HaMukdamin Psulim HaMeucharin Kesherim. The Mishnah says that when you have a shtar that's mukdam, that the date of the shtar is earlier than the date of the actual transaction, that shtar is pasul. Why? Very simple. Imagine to yourself, you are lending $1 million to somebody. The moment that you lend, all of his assets, all of his real estate become mishubat, they become liable for the loan that he is taking from you. So if he has 3 houses today, and now I'm lending him $1 million, all of those 3 houses are basically liened to pay back this chov, and if I go to him after the date that he's supposed to pay, and he doesn't have the money, I could collect his karka. Now imagine to yourself, if I am lending him today, right? And yesterday he bought a land. Now, is that land liable? Does it have a lien for my thing? Of course it does. If yesterday he bought a land and today he's borrowing $1 million, I got that land in. Now that land is on a hook for my thing. I go to him, he doesn't pay, I'm just gonna go confiscate his land. Right? Now imagine if he would write, if he would write the shtar today and he would buy the land tomorrow. Is that land now liable? It's not, right? Because he didn't have the land at the time that he borrowed money from me. That's a new land, right? So if I now do the shtar earlier, and therefore the lands that he bought later on, now it seems like they were bought after the loan, right? So all of a sudden, you have a difference in the liens that I have on the land, and that would be pasul, because if I could collect from things that are not collectibles for my loan, it's going to be shtar mukdam, it's going to be pasul. If you write it afterwards, that's a different story. That already you had this stuff, so they are going to be liable anyway. So it says the Gemara, shtar mukdam is pasul, shtar meuchar is kasher. תיתן שטרי חוב המוקדמים פסולים והמאוחרים כשרים. תנו רבנן. Now, by the way, just in parentheses, you have a long Rashi here, right? And you have even a longer Tosafot. They're discussing one simple thing, and that is, I understand from this that you have to have a date on the shtar. And that already we know from other Gemaras, that you have to have a date on the shtar. Who says you have to have a Rosh Hashanah? As long as you have a date on the shtar, that already should be kasher. Because I want to know when exactly this loan happened, and not that it shouldn't be earlier. That was, by the way, this is very important when it comes to every ketubah. Sometimes you see a wedding is taking a little longer because of Persian time, and it's getting into Shkia, and everyone is getting nervous. Right? Why are they getting nervous? Because if the ketubah is written for yesterday, but you are not actually getting into the marriage bond until later, so that shtar says that this chatan said to the kala, be my wife, have a lila into Kedat Moshe Yisrael, and the date of the ketubah is when? Yesterday. So it becomes a shtar muktam. Shtar muktam is pasul. If shtar muktam is pasul, then you don't have a ketubah. You don't have a ketubah, it's asur to live together. Right? That's why everyone gets very, very nervous. That's the whole thing. Can you make a kinyan from before? Can you not make a kinyan? But the reason that you see people rush to get it in either before Shkia or after Sedat Chavim is because you want to know exactly what day the ketubah was, and the difference that it makes is not just the one day. The difference is, if it's shtar muktam, the whole ketubah is pasul. So the Rashi and Tosafot discuss, each one of them have a different way of understanding why you read the Rosh Hashanah over here, Ayin Sham. One more important point is that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah Limlachim, that you used to write the date based on the year of the king, and Rashi says this was done L'Shlom Malchut, to have peace with the king. What does it sound like? Is the king Jewish or a goy? A goy, right? That's how it sounds like. And this is really where he brings it from Masechet Gittin. Masechet Gittin is speaking about counting to the Malchei HaGoyim, Malchei HaUmot. You count in the shtarot that we had, we would count in the Gittin for the Goyish kings. The only problem is, you take a few pages that you learn, we're going to learn together, we're going to see that when we say that Echad Ben Nisan is Rosh Hashanah LeMelachim, which kings are we speaking about? Jewish kings only. Rosh Hashanah for Goyish kings is actually Echad B'Tishrei. So what sense does the whole thing make? Right? You follow the question. The Mishnah says here that Echad B'Nisan is Rosh Hashanah for Melachim, and if because of Shalom Malchut, as we see in Masechet Gittin, at the end of Masechet Gittin, but yet, really, Rosh Hashanah for Malchei Goyim is Tishrei. Echad is only for Jewish kings. So you have to understand what the Gemara here means is, really, we're talking about the Rosh Hashanah for only Jewish kings. And there is Shalom Malchut to be made with them too. We had plenty, if you go through Sefer Melachim, we had plenty of bad, difficult, dangerous Jewish kings, especially in Malchei Yisrael. It was very, very difficult. You had to really appease them. All that the Gemara means to bring a raya from Masechet Gittin, the proof that we bring from Masechet Gittin, which is talking about the Goyish kings, is only to teach us, to show us that their minhag was to write the years of the king in shtarot that we have, in the documents that we have, and therefore when we were in Yerushalayim and we had the Beit HaMikdash, we wrote, of course, for Malchei Yisrael, and that was Echad Ben Nisan. When we went to Galut, we continued doing that for Shalom Malchut with Malchei Goyim, and that was counted from Tishrei. So that's really how the Gemara is set up, even though that the Mishnah is speaking about Echad Ben Nisan, which is only Malchei Yisrael. The raya that we bring that they actually did this is from Masechet Gittin, which is talking about the Goyish kings, to just show you that us, the Jews, we've been always counting, giving respect to the current king. If we were in Yerushalayim, we did Malchei Yisrael. When we went to Galut after the Churban, we did it for the Goyish kings in order to give them kavod and to keep a deep and rooted peace with the government, with the king, in order to have safety and security for the community. Says the Gemara. תנו רבן, מלך שעמד ב-29 באדר, כיוון שהגיע אחד בניסן, אל תלו שנה. If a king was nominated at the end of Chodesh Adar, ממש the last day, 29 באדר, כיוון שהגיע אחד בניסן, אל תלו שנה. Once tomorrow comes, and you're Rosh Chodesh Nisan, he is already in his second year. Now, obviously, this is only for Shtarot, right? If you want to count how many years he's been a king for a day. But in Shtarot, you already are going to write in the first day of the month of Nisan, in the second year of this king, even though that's only 2 days on throne. Says the Gemara, "Ve'im lo amad ela be'echad b'Nisan," and if it gets 1 day delayed, and he stands on the Echad b'Nisan, the beginning of Chodesh Nisan, en monin lo shana, at sheyagia Nisan acher. Then you have to wait an entire year. His year is not going to be 1 day, but it's going to be actually 1 full year. Amar more. Melech she'amad ב-29 באדר. A king that was sat on the throne, he became a king at the end of Adar, כיוון שהגיע אחד בניסן, אל תלו שנה. This 1 day that he waits until Rosh Chodesh Nisan is considered the whole year for him in the count of his years. Says the Gemara, Hakamash Malan. This comes to teach us the Nisan Rosh Hashanah Limilachim veYom Echad B'Shana Chashuv Shana. Teaches you 2 things. A, that what's the date of Rosh Hashanah Limilachim is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and it also teaches you that it doesn't make a difference if it was a full 354 days or if it was just 1 day. V'yom echad b'shana chashuv shana. 1 day already can be considered 1 year of his kingdom. Ve'im lo amad ela be'echad b'nisan. The second part of this, that if he did not become a king until the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, en monin lo shana ad sheyagia Nisan, that we don't count for him until the next Nisan comes around, which is going to be a full year of his kingdom. Says the Gemara, that's pshita. Of course it's pashut. You already told me that 1 day could be considered a year, and the year changes on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So why do I need the second point? Why do you need to tell me if he didn't become a king until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, now you have to wait a year? I could calculate that myself. Once you tell me that the king that becomes a king on the end of Chodesh Adar, in 1 day he becomes second year, I could calculate myself that if he didn't become a king, it was Persian time, and he waited until tomorrow, now you have to wait a whole year. I know that. So what's the chidush in that? Says the Gemara, the chidush is lo tzricha de imnu aleh me'adar. The chidush is that if they already had made a decision, the elections, Lavdil, was in November, they decided that this guy is going to be the king, but he's not going to be a king until mid-January. Still, even though that you knew by Adar, by beginning of Nisan, you knew who is going to be the king, but if he officially did not take reign of the government, he's not going to be king. So therefore, even though that you knew by Adar that he's going to be the next king, still his dates are started from the day that he sits on the throne, takes the reign of the country, and therefore it's not going to be counted until the next coming Nisan. So it says, we would have thought that let us count 2 years already, because we knew from Adar that he's going to be the king. Kamash Malan, it comes to teach us that that's not true. Now, we have to talk a little bit about the examples of this in Tanakh. We have fantastic back and forth examples from Tanakh, which actually some of them raise big questions in Halakha, and once you read them, say, that's a very big question. How to fit it with the Gemara, which Be'ezrat Hashem we will discuss tomorrow morning.